Hello, happy Tuesday. I think we're live. I'll wait for the thumbs up from the wife over here. See if she's hearing anything. All right, it sounds like we're good to go. I'm gonna take my headphones off here. Oh, flip over so you can see me. Hello there. We are in beautiful St. Louis, Missouri. And I am in a kind of fun little low wing aerobatic plane today. Figured we could do some flying around the arch towards the end. So um, you'll see me. It's a little less stable because it's meant to be able to do quick turns and things. So bear with me if it's a little jumpy. I'll try and keep it a little bit more even. All right, we'll see if the chat is going here. See, maybe Fractals is on there. Post up the flight plan and the flight events. And while people are getting settled in, small administrative update. And I don't know if I like that wording for this part of it, but it is useful to have some heads up. So this particular park is about 91 acres, I believe. I'll check that in a second. And so it doesn't have all that much to it. I take that back. It has a lot to it, but it's a very small area. So I did something a little different this time. I actually grabbed the map of where Lewis and Clark went on their expedition. And so this, when I published the flight plan for the flight sim community, is what I ended up including. So this is a pretty cool way to explore where they went. Them in the Core of Discovery was the group they were with. But for today, I just zoomed in on the very beginning of this and kind of based the flight plan around that. And so what I'm going to do, though, is actually turn that off because I think having just the city is probably more useful and it gets all the same information. So we'll do it like this for today. Hey, Fractals. All right, yep, so I'm on the West USA server, and what do you say we get rolling here? So I'll flip in, get ourselves a little sunrise takeoff here. So with it being an aerobatic plane, there's a lot of rudder pedal that I'm using to just keep it up. It's also a tail wheel, which means that let's see if I can get this thing going. I did a couple practice takeoffs, and it is a tricky plane to keep even. All right, there we go. That's sunrise over the instruments. Wonderful. So you can see St. Louis off in the distance, and you can see, oops, it's a good thing I flipped the over here, so go to the full screen view instead. You got St. Louis off on the right. We're actually going to start off to our left at the historic Cahokia courthouse. So, like I said, we'll do kind of some of the key points along the way that Lewis and Clark did in their expedition. That's how we'll spend most of the time here. Thank you, Fractals. Yeah, I'm curious to see how many people have been here before. And I did it from 2018, before 2018 when it was a national park. I'm curious if anyone has been there since it became a national park. Obviously, last year was quite a year, and so I wouldn't be surprised if there was not a ton of people who have been there. Those are coming up here. Let me do a couple of things. I'm actually going to zoom ahead our daylight so we can see slightly better what's going on down. All right, Gateway Arch National Park. So we're coming up here on the Chokia courthouse. It's like right in that thicket of trees. You can't really see it very well. And this is where Lewis and Clark planned most of their trip. So when they had to go and meet to do the actual logistical work, that was where they ended up going. I'll pull up a little picture of that so you can see what it is. So that's kind of what it looks like. Just a kind of cool house, and really sets the tone, I think, for a lot of the other places that we'll see today. So Gateway Arch National Park is an American national park located in St. Louis, Missouri, near the starting point of the Lewis and Clark expedition. The memorial was established to commemorate the Louisiana Purchase and the subsequent western movement of American explorers and pioneers. They call it the arch the gateway to the west. So it's the gateway to the westward expansion. And you'll see as we pass it on our left here. So we're going to pass it first, and then we'll come back and actually spend a little bit of time in the park. But it really is like a gateway to the west, everything west of the Mississippi. The second reason the the memorial was established was it was the first civil government west of the Mississippi River. And then finally, it was the debate over slavery that was raised by the Dred Scott case occurred in the old courthouse just behind the monument. As you'll see both of those two when we pass back around to see the park a little closer. Hopefully we'll get there in 2022. Yeah, there you go. It looks like a really, really fun park to go and visit. Stacy, I think it would be a good way to go. St. Louis is an interesting place. Very ghetto in certain places, gorgeous in others. I've heard that before, actually. I've never been. Yeah, fractals. That's fair. That's fair. The two aren't necessarily separate. Okay, so there's the old courthouse and the Gateway Arch. Passing on our right. Now we'll spend a little bit more time there in just a little bit, so don't worry. We will be back. All right, what's our poll results here? Before was National Park, 1 vote, and 3 for not yet. Okay. Yeah, so I'm in that not yet category. I have not been to St. Louis. I've not been to the Gateway Arch. Definitely on the list, though, especially after learning all this stuff about it. The Gateway Arch consists of 4 things. So I mentioned the Gateway Arch itself, which we'll talk a little bit more about. The 91-acre park along the Mississippi River, which is where the earliest buildings of the St. Louis city were. The old courthouse I mentioned, which is the former state and federal courthouse where the Dred Scott case originated. And then the last thing is the actual museum at the Gateway Arch, which is underneath the arch. Really, just me? Weird. Oh, as a fractals, I was like, what are you? What? Okay. Oh, I forgot a little bit of background. So for those of you who have joined before, you already know, but the idea is to pick a different national park each week to explore together. Visit some of the key attractions, talk about the park, its history, and enjoy the views from the sky. Speaking of which, we are flying over the Mississippi River right now. For those of you with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, you can fly along the flight plan. So this is posted up, and that's what I have sharing on the iPad screen right there. Little disclaimer, I am a pilot, but we'll be taking full advantage of the flight sim, so please don't try this at home. I've also researched the park in preparation and added any new information with sources to the National Parks wiki page. Why to the wiki page? There's 2 main reasons. So it's a way to make sure that the facts are checked by others. It's also a way to give back to a living body of knowledge that goes beyond our hour here. So to that end, if you notice anything incorrect or that needs to be clarified, feel free to go and fix the wiki page. As the wiki community often says, be bold and make the updates. Quick heads up also before I forget, we'll pick the next national park to go explore at the end, so look out for that post in the chat. And also if you have questions or thoughts that come up while we're flying around, feel free to post them in there. I promise I will try and look and actually catch some of those. All right. So without further ado, I'm Jules Altus, and I'll be your pilot for this evening. So sit back, relax, and let's explore Gateway Arch National Park. We've kind of passed 2 of our points, so this is just to highlight the Mississippi River we're flying along here as a key part of St. Louis City. Okay, so I was looking for park videos because I really enjoyed that way of seeing what the park is, and I stumbled on one that I really enjoyed. So let me pull this up real quick. This is with Park Ranger Aaron. Park Ranger Aaron must be in charge of the some sort of new push with the park, because this is post-pandemic, and actually really well done. Kind of a fun, like, oh, we have the park to ourselves, what are we gonna do? So
it's like that Katy Perry song.
Hi, welcome to Gateway Arch National Park. I'm Erin Hillegaspel, and I'm Director of Education. Welcome to the Old Courthouse. This is the site of some really important court cases, like the Dred and Harriet Scott court case, where Dred was suing for his freedom. We're standing in Luther Eli Smith Square, which was part of the $380 million renovation project for the Gateway Arch. This green space is available for people to enjoy, come out, eat their lunch, walk their dogs, and it leads them right to the new entrance to the Gateway Arch. We're standing in the park over the highway, which easily and seamlessly connects the city of St. Louis to the park grounds. Welcome. We're standing inside the only entrance to Gateway Arch Visitor Center. You come here, you can talk with the ranger, you can get your passport stamp, get your ticket to go up to the top. You can go get a snack at the cafe or stop and get a great souvenir at the arch door. West Gallery, which in addition to the Terrazzo map and the entrance, they make up the 46,000 square foot addition that was created when we underwent renovation. We are here, and these screens provide an immersive experience as you're entering the museum itself, designed to kind of give you the feeling of what it would be like to head west.
Oh, hi there. Oh, it's Ranger Aaron.
When the team was designing these exhibits and galleries, it was really important to them to include as many people that come to visit our park as possible. So what you can see here is
I just realized that I had the mic muted for that entire thing, I believe. Is that which? Okay, now I'm getting well, that's pretty unfortunate. I was just telling my wife before this that I felt like I was getting the tech down, but there we go. Learn my lesson. So I was just saying that I was seeing dropped frames on my side, so sorry if it's been choppy. It looks like it's gotten better. And then I was zipping through this part of the video just to say that they cover a little bit about the accessibility features of the park, talk about some of the things that are activities you can do in the museum itself, which looks really cool. So I'll post this up into the Discord afterwards. It shows like what the riverfront used to be. And then finally finishes off with a little bit about, this is pretty cool. So this is when they did the arch, they did it as a competition. Let me play this part real quick.
Design for the monument here at Gateway Arch National Park was actually a competition. So here we have models of the top 5 finalists that were in the competition. So this kind of demonstrates and shows what the monument could have looked like, those selection possibilities. Eero Saarinen's design was the final winner of the Gateway Arch, of course. He even beat out his own father in the competition. So this model shows how the arch tram works. It's a one-of-a-kind system where it's kind of a combination between an elevator, an escalator, and a Ferris wheel to keep the riders upright, even to accommodate over that curve of the arch. Dick Bowser created this design. Nothing had ever been done like it before, and he was able to solve a problem where thousands of visitors were going to go up in the arch every day. They had to be able to accommodate that curve, and it couldn't do any damage to the exterior of the arch. This is our keystone piece, and it's fully accessible to all people to come on and see what it's like at the top of the arch. 17 feet across and only about 6 feet high. So people can get in here and see a live view of what it would be from the top. We're missing all of our friends at the store, in the cafe, and the tram. We hope you guys are all staying healthy, staying distant, and we hope to see you soon.
Bye, Ranger Aaron. It's one of the first national park videos that was very of the time, sort of COVID aware, I guess I would say. She also mentioned at the end there that it's like their keystone piece, that piece she was showing of you can go and see what the view looks like. Remember that she called it the keystone piece of the arch. We'll talk about that a little bit later. All right, so off to our right we have this is the Missouri River. Excuse me, Missouri River is directly below us. Mississippi River is off to our right. A little ways back we passed the Camp du Bois, which I think I'm saying right, is the place where Lewis and Clark trained the men that they were going to go on the expedition with. So this is a replication of what that camp looked like. It's got a very kind of that same feel from that 1800s sort of look. We also passed the point where the Mississippi and the Missouri River, the confluence of the two rivers. It's not very interesting in the game, so I didn't spend much time on it, but it's an important point as this kind of joining of the two. Yeah, Sailor Guy, I agree. It looks like a really good upgrade. And the poor park finished all of this work in 2018, and then 2019 had to shut everything down, but it's the way it goes, I guess. So would recommend checking out the park. And I believe it's free, so. Okay, so the kind of person of the week, as I like to pick a different person each time, I'm trying to lean into that a little bit more. So this week we're going to go with Thomas Jefferson. Let's see if this will load. There you go. Probably seen Thomas Jefferson before. So Thomas Jefferson, the original park was named the Jefferson Memorial the Jefferson Expansion Memorial. And it was a nod to Jefferson's Louisiana Purchase, and then also his kicking off the Lewis and Clark expedition and the expansion westward. So he was born 1743, lived till 1826, was an American statesman, diplomat, lawyer, architect, philosopher, and founding father, who served as the third president of the United States from 1801 to 1809. He was the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. He was a proponent of democracy, republicanism, and individual rights. And and a lot of which motivated American colonists to break from the Kingdom of Great Britain and form a new nation. He produced formative documents and decisions at both state and nationwide levels. Probably heard of him a number of times, but for those of you who are a fan of the musical Hamilton, they do a really good job, I think, of capturing some of those ideas. So there's a lot more to talk about with Thomas Jefferson than we could get into, but I really liked the way that the park structured their page about him was around the three things that he wanted on his gravestone. So he put three particular items there when he died, and you can't really read it here, but I just pulled that up because I had it handy. The first one was author of Declaration of Independence, which is kind of self-explanatory. The second one was his religious views were very important to all of us politically in the United States. In particular, he reacted strongly to the fact that the laws of the Virginia colony only allowed Anglicans to hold public office. And so that prompted him to later write the Statute of Religious Freedom for Virginia, which later became parts of the Bill of Rights, especially around freedom of religion and separation of church and state. So those ideas that freedom of religion and separation of church and state was really important to Jefferson. It was a big part of what he was pushing for in his original writings. The third piece that he had on his gravestone was his involvement in the University of Virginia, Charlottesville, which he founded and helped grow into a successful university. Fractals are neat. Park is free. Costs money to go up to the arch, though. Need to buy a ticket. Okay, there you go. So you can do your virtual Keystone visit in the museum if you want, but if you want to go up, you gotta buy money. Kind of makes sense. The tram is a pretty novel design. That seems like something they would want to push on. So, all right. Well, we are flying over the Missouri River, which is also the path that Lewis and Clark took. Fractals, do you want to post up the question about rivers? So our first topic of today is on rivers. I figure if we're going to be spending so much time flying over them, we might as well talk a little bit about how they work. You go, TJ. I don't totally know what that means, Fractals, but appreciate the encouragement. Okay, so what is a river? Pretty self-explanatory. A river is a natural flowing watercourse, usually freshwater, flowing towards an ocean, sea, lake, or other river. And it's part of the water cycle. And while we'll let this, here, tell you what, I'm going to pause this super quick. We'll look out the window. So let me pull up where we are. So this is the Lewis and Clark Boathouse, which if you are in the area, seems like a very cool place to go and learn a bunch of the history of the time. So this is sort of a museum where they'll do, actors will come in and portray parts of the history. And the core of Discovery, which is the 42 men who went with Lewis and Clark, stayed there for 6 days in this general area of St. Charles, waiting for Lewis before he finished up business that he had going. Thomas Jefferson, you go TJ. Thomas Jefferson, TJ. That's funny. You and TJ, old friends. They're Fractals. Okay, so let's look at this poll. What does it mean for a river to meander? So is it flow really slow and sway? Maybe it's been drinking. Or the river bends intensify and the river slowly moves around its floodplain. Maybe it's just nature. Or is it ramble on and on about some topic? Like maybe it hosts a live stream. Gotta give people a second there to vote. Which plane am I flying? So while people are doing that one here, I'll do a little outside pan. So this is a Cap 10. It's a low wing, little aerobatic plane. It's actually a French plane. Sort of Thomas Jefferson got a theme going on. One little fun fact about it, you'll notice on aerobatic planes they have this little triangle on the edge. That's actually so that when you do aerobatics, you can sight what angle you are relative to the horizon. So if you're supposed to do a aerobatic maneuver that's straight up and down, then you would know that you're straight up and down. Fractals, you have got it all down. Good on you. Nice, yeah. It's actually a really fun plane to fly. It's tricky. It's tricky. All the aerobatic planes are a little tricky, but that's okay. All right, Fractals. So, what do we got for a poll result there? Anything coming up? Also, I was curious. Does anyone else have a favorite river? I was prepping for this. It occurred to me that I like the Mississippi River for a lot of reasons, but especially having been to both the source and the mouth of the river, the beginning and the end. Just something about like seeing it from the very beginning to seeing it to the final. Its final form it's just really fond memories for me. So I don't know if anyone else has got that same sort of thing. Okay, so everyone pretty much got it. It's a little bit of a jokey one. So it is when a river meanders, it's that it is slowly kind of, well, let's talk about it a little bit more actually here. I'll show you. So let me do this and flip over. So I'm going to be on the iPad, and you'll notice that all of these rivers have these kind of like curves to them. The Mississippi up above and the Missouri down below have these weird bends all the way through. And if you think about it, you know, you have a river that starts, and rivers are part of the water cycle, like I mentioned, right? So rain evaporates, and then it falls, it collects somewhere, and then it eventually runs off as a river. But why doesn't it run just the shape of whatever the valley it is, right? It seems like it would be much easier for it to just go directly to where it's going, and instead you get these kind of structures like Horseshoe Bend, where you get these incredible curves in the river. For kind of, it just seems weird. It seems like, why would they do that? Pickle, Mekong. Where's Mekong River? Namakogon River. Stacy, that one I know. Pickle, where's the Mekong? Also, if I'm saying that wrong, you can send how I should pronounce it. Okay, so this is the Horseshoe Bend, is a kind of a classic river bend. But there's another one. This is the Missouri River, the one a little further upstream, and you can see it has these pretty wild bends, given that it's just kind of a flat. Probably the Colorado River, the Red River because it flows north. I do love a north flowing river. Yep. Colorado River because it's just awesome. Lots of great places to explore and raft. Yeah. Whitewater rafting. The New Valley Gorge, the new national park, is big for whitewater rafting. So. Gotta go with the Colorado River. Yep, Colorado River. And Rosno and Fractals are fighting over their favorite river. That's good. Sharing is caring. Okay, so why does it curve like that? Well, it turns out that rivers go through their own sort of life cycle. So these bends develop because there's a cut bank erosion and a point bar deposition. Deposition? I just realized I haven't said that out loud yet. A deposit on the point bar, and I'll show exactly what that means. So the water moving around the bend moves faster on the outside than it does on the inside. And because of that, you get two different phenomena. So on the outside, you end up with cut bank. So this is kind of an example of cut bank, and kind of an extreme example of what it looks like, but it's an erosion along the outer bank. It can be a little bit more gentle of an erosion, but I like because this one is pretty stark. You can see exactly what it's talking about. On the inner bank, though, you end up with what's called point bar deposits. So imagine that you have I'm going to try and explain the phenomena that's going on. So if you have some bowl with water, and you put a bit of sand in, or rice or something in the middle of it, when you stir that bowl, all the rice goes to the center, which is pretty weird, right? You'd think that when you start spinning it, that all the rice would shoot out to the sides, kind of like centrifugal force pushing it out to the edges, but instead it goes to the center. This is because the water is showing something called vortex flow. That same thing, that same inward pull happens around a river bend. So if we go back to the horseshoe bend, as it's coming around the river, the inner part is actually getting pulled in further to the center, and so you end up having some of the sediment, usually just from the riverbed immediately in front of it, getting pulled off and put onto the point bar, which is that little thing that extends. So between the erosion on the outer bank and the point bar deposition, then you end up with a river that can cut its way into the land. So let me show, I think I have a better example of this one. Let me look at the chat. Roslyn, I guess. Gotta learn to share fractals. I've always been a fan of the crazy Tycho. Where's that? In Southeast Asia. Okay, Southeast Asia. Cool. Amazon River. Yeah, Amazon River is pretty neat. That's on my list for sure to go and see. Changes flow. It changes flow with the rainy season. That's interesting. Yeah, it turns out rivers go super deep, as with a lot of these topics. So we're talking really about how they move, but there's so much more. Some crazy rivers in Africa that are constantly changing course because of the deposition. Yeah. So this is a point bar. This is kind of a good example of it. You can see this sandy beach. There's some kayakers, I think, on the edge. Is because of that vortex flow. As the outer bank is getting eroded, the inner bank is getting sediment deposited on it. Not necessarily the same. It's not like it's eroding and then depositing, but it's kind of in the same area. Okay, so then when you get those two things together, you end up with this sort of thing. So you get a point bar on the inside and a cut bank on the outside. Okay, so let me see if I want to keep flying this plane just yet. So we can actually cut back to the old, I'm gonna drive this without flying just for a moment. I did all this setup so I could have the flight going at the same time, and now I'm just paused. That's funny. The lake is Dublin's River. Oh, Dublin's River. Good choice. Historical flows the CU2. Man, pronunciation left and right. Okay. At any rate, so imagine you play that forward now. So you have a river that's sort of eroding on the outer bank and depositing it on the inner bank. With enough time, then you get an oxbow lake that forms. So your river starts out sort of straight with a little bit of a bend, and you get more of a bend over time until there's an outer bank and an inner bank here, and an outer bank and an inner bank here. And then it'll exaggerate that shape, until finally you end up with a river that has now kind of returned to where it was before, but left off this oxbow lake, which is this structure that goes there. And so what that looks like in real life is like this. So you have your river that's really meandering, and we have an oxbow lake down at the bottom here. You have another oxbow lake up at the top here. There are a couple of places you can see them where they're kind of out and around. And if you take that same motion, so the river sort of creating these curves and then dropping the curves and coming back to center and doing this back and forth, that's the meandering motion. And if you do that long enough, the river actually carves out its own floodplain. So that process then levels everything that's in the general area, and that becomes the area that the river can flood, which looks like this. So you can see the river's still here, but we have all of these old oxbow lakes, or now dried oxbow lakes, and if the river flooded, it would flood over this entire area. That's the whole area it's meandering. Stacy, yeah, right? It's sort of weird to think about that rivers are kind of moving and they kind of snake along. They meander. That's why they use the word. But that's the same thing. So that's the same thing we're seeing in Missouri. So if we go back here, it's that same sort of phenomena. You get rivers that bend and break and change over time. So, all right. So, in summary, rivers slowly carve out floodplain by meandering. Let me turn around, make sure I'm going to my next destination here. So rivers slowly carve out a floodplain by meandering. They erode on the outer bank and they deposit on the inner bank. If the river bends enough, an oxbow lake can form, cutting the part of the river off. So that little outer bend part would then be cut off from the main part of the river. And I really liked that idea of the oxbow lake, especially for the New Year's, because it's sort of like, if you have something that you're working on, some New Year's resolution, maybe part of yourself that you want to just kind of let go of, just like the river, you can just kind of pop that out and continue flowing just like you were. So if you're trying to make a change this year, you can, cut it out like an oxbow lake. Did you like that flow? Okay, that was a series of really bad jokes, but I had a lot of fun doing it. So, also, if cut it out like an oxbow lake catches on, I mean, that's pretty great. So, all right, we'll leave it on that that incredible joke. Fractals, do you mind posting up our arches poll? So the next one to talk about is, no surprise to anyone, is the arch itself. So we have my wife is giggling. Maybe she just likes my sense of humor. That could be it. Okay, so next piece for today is about arches. So let me pull up this actually, and I will switch over to Chrome again. So there was 2 videos actually of this park that I really liked.
Hello, I'm Ranger Carl.
Ranger, thank you, Fractals. Okay, so let me read this one off real quick. What is a catenary curve? It's the curve a rope assumes under its own weight when supported only at the ends. Or is it the shape a cat makes as it prepares to jump on a canary? Catenary. Or is it an old pickup line used by Thomas Jefferson? The catenary curve. I'll give people a second to vote on that one. So, like I mentioned, there's a second video that I actually really liked from...
And welcome to Jefferson National Expansion Memorial, one of your units of the National Park System. This national park site was created here in St. Louis, Missouri, to honor our 3rd President Thomas Jefferson and his dream of our country's westward expansion. Come join me as we ride to the top of our country's tallest national man-made monument, the Gateway Arch. Welcome to the lower load zone of the Gateway Arch. In just one moment, we're going to board the tram capsule for our journey to the top. The ride to the top of the Gateway Arch takes 4 minutes, and the tram moves at a top speed of less than 5 miles per hour. Once we reach the top, we are going to exit our tram capsule onto a staircase that will take us up to the observation deck. Though it was famed architect Eero Saarinen who designed this famous monument, it was inventor Richard Bowser who came up with the concept for the arch tram system. And it's still the same design that each year transports thousands of visitors to the observation deck. We are now riding inside one of the tram capsules inside of the Gateway Arch. This tram capsule is connected with 7 others to form what we call the tram. Windows in each tram car allow visitors to see the interior of the arch. Staircases are always close by. There are 1,076 stairs in each leg. The tram cars will snugly fit 5 people. The tram's unique design and shape enable the cars to navigate through the stainless steel triangles which make up each leg. The triangles are 54 feet across at the base of the arch, but taper to just 17 feet at the top. As we're riding to the top, you'll notice that there is some movement of this tram capsule, and that's to keep us level on our 4-minute journey to the top. Once the tram arrives at the top, the doors will open, and it's up a flight of stairs to the observation deck. Welcome to the top of the Gateway Arch. We are standing here at the Arch Observation Deck, which is 630 feet above the ground. On a busy summer day, the top of the arch can accommodate 160 visitors. There are 32 windows at the top, 16 looking west into the city of St. Louis and the state of Missouri, and then 16 looking east across the Mississippi River into the state of Illinois. On a windy day, you can feel the top of the arch sway in the wind. It is designed to sway about a half an inch in a 30-mile-per-hour wind, an inch and a half in a 50, and a maximum sway of 18 inches in a 150-mile-per-hour wind. The arch is also designed to withstand earthquakes up to 8.5 on the Richter scale. There is a park ranger stationed up here at the top. If you have any questions or concerns, they'd be happy to assist you. We welcome you to the top and look forward to your visit.
Music. Nice there, Crazy Tycho. Fractals, hey girl, like them catenary curves you got going on there. Fractal, do you know what a catenary curve is already? I guess you have the show notes, you could look. It's a kind of funny, but I won't spoil it just yet. So, okay. First, arches. So what are they? An arch is an elevated curved structure that spans, a vertical curved structure that spans an elevated space and may or may not support the weight above it. In the case of a horizontal, it can also be, in the case of a horizontal arch, like an arch dam, it could hold back water pressure. So in the case of an arch like this, you got an arch that's like a dam. Two different ways to think about it. Seems like a good place to get stuck during the end of the world, right? You get your 18 inches of sway and your 8.5 earthquake going on. Probably would be, actually. It's pretty well reinforced. All right, what do we got for votes? An old pickup line used by Thomas Jefferson for 2 votes. Probably was, to be honest. It turns out he did coin the term catenary, which I thought was kind of fitting for this park, that he would be the one who came up with the word. And then 3 votes for the correct answer on this one, which is the curve a rope assumes when it's supported by only its own weight. So, all right, so arches. They showed up as early as 2nd millennia BC in Mesopotamia, brick architecture, but really got a lot of use in the Roman era. They were first applied to it was a technique used in a lot of different structures. So how does it work? Basically, the arch stands up on its own weight because the upper portions push down on the lower portions. This upper portion pushing down the lower is called compression. Oops, I'm outside the plane here. I can do like this one, but I've been doing that for a little while. The arch is useful because many building materials like stone or unreinforced concrete can resist compression. So they won't do as well with other types of pressure, but with compression, they can hold it just fine. But that design only works once the arch is complete. So it's only after you put in the crucial keystone piece that it actually will stand up on its own. So this is the keystone. So when you see an arch, look for the keystone. Sometimes they'll make it a little bit bigger. Like in this case, they've kind of worked it up into the stonework a little bit. Sometimes it'll be like a lion head or something. They'll do a lot of things with that. That's the keystone. But I've always just assumed ropes were massless. Right? I'll make a spherical cow joke for you a little later. Okay, so you put the keystone piece in place. The problem is, if you have to have the arch built for it to hold its own weight up, then what are you going to do? Typically what they would put in place is something called a form called a center or centering, which is sort of you put a wood structure underneath, and then you assemble the arch over it, you remove the wood structure, and it stands up on its own. Oh, yeah. Oh, fractals, I forgot to mention, rivers at their delta take on a fractal structure, I learned. And it wasn't worth going into too much, but I thought of you when I saw that. I was like, oh, fractals are neat. We think that's neat. Okay, so that's centering. Oops, I don't know if I actually showed that or not, but I pulled up the picture. So you put the wood underneath, and then it kind of stands on its own. Many different forms of arch. 3 classic ones that you'll encounter. There's the circular arch, which kind of looks like this. There's a pointed arch, which looks kind of like, well, it's a very small version of it, but like the top here. And then there's a parabolic arch. And this is often used in like bridges. In this case, we have a 4th type called a Cantory arch. And Oh, you also have naturally occurring arches. So, this is a pretty classic one, but they all use the same basic principles. They can stand up on their own weight because of the way that they're formed. That's why fractals are neat. That is why fractals are neat. They do show up everywhere. Okay, so this last type of arch is a cannery arch. What is a cannery? Then a cannery curve is if you hung an idealized chain or cable, the shape it assumes under its own weight is called a cannery curve. So this is sort of what it looks like if you were to move it. Now this is the smallest thing ever. I want to make it bigger. It's not much better. But imagine you're holding a chain at two ends. That you've probably seen this before if you do it with like headphones, or you do it with like anything, any cable, any rope, anything with mats. Sup, Scott? Then you'll get this sort of cannery shape. And common places you'll see this. Chains are a pretty big example. So like you've probably seen this in various places. Fractals are neat. Sees it all the time when he tries to get in the club and they pull up the velvet rope. Can't get in. Sorry, Fractals. Another place you might see it, electrical wires. You also see it on like spider webs, for instance. Anyone else got other examples? As I was starting to think about this, there's a lot of places where you see this sort of like suspended by two ends on its own weight. I would love to know if people in the chat have things. Honestly, if you look around, you'll probably see something. I was hanging up some Christmas lights over in just kind of a little cozy area in our apartment, and I was hanging them up and I realized that the lights form cannery arches, and we did sort of like an angled thing, and they're all cannery arches, and suddenly you're seeing cannery arches catenary arches everywhere. Anyone else got any other ones you're seeing around? Shoot them up in the chat. I'll check it out. Okay, so that's a cannery curve. And that cannery structure is actually the optimal shape for a freestanding arch of consistent thickness, because in the same way that if you imagine when you hang the rope that each piece of the rope is being pulled down equally by gravity and then pulled apart equally by its neighboring chains in the link of chains links in the chain, that same as being pulled by its neighbors and it's being pulled down by gravity. If you flip that upside down, then you get the same sort of correct amount of pressure on its neighbors and the correct amount of downward force on gravity that lets it stand really well. So that's why it works so well for an arch design. That curve has a number of other useful properties, one of which is in boating. So if you ever go to anchor a boat, hopefully you'll let out a significant amount of line, probably a lot more line than you would expect. This is because, and one of the things, the first time I anchored a boat, I let out enough that the anchor hit the ground, but then nothing more. And the problem with that is that if you hit a wave, it'll kind of lift the anchor off the ground and then you'll just float. So it doesn't really work very well. But you're actually going for more than that. You're not just trying to get the anchor to be a 45-degree angle so it kind of hooks on and drags a little bit more. You actually want slack in the line. Part of that is because the slack that's in the rope when you have enough let out in the boat gives it better. It enhances the performance of the anchor and raises the level of force required to resist it before dragging. So that bit of slack, that cannery arch that you see when you anchor your boat, the same reason that the Gateway Arch is so structurally sound, can hold up to an 8.5 Richter earthquake, is the same reason that you would let out extra line on your boat. So keep that in mind next time you go fishing or any other kind of boat activity. The arch is as tall as it is wide. That arch is as tall as it is wide. Stacey, the Gateway arches, Stacey? That could be true. I don't know why that didn't come up when I was reading it, but I don't know if I would have checked on it. It probably is, actually. That's probably how they ended up doing it. DTW. How about garland? Garland's a good example. DTW. Smart, yeah. Like a hanging garland or some sort of like hanging plant that would be like that. One other quick side note, suspension bridges often don't use a cannery arch. It's because the road weighs so much more than the weight of the cable. And so if you look at the Golden Gate Bridge, for instance, this is a parabolic shape, not a cannery shape. That's just because the road is so heavy compared to the cable. There's a cathedral, or more maybe, that hung chains with the weights to mimic the load of each peak, and then basically inverted to form the arches. Scott, I wonder if that's St. Paul's Cathedral. So St. Paul's was a pretty famous one that uses cannery arch shapes. And yeah, it's basically for that reason. It's just a really structurally sound design. Can you imagine though, just like you're like, oh, how am I going to design this? I'll just hang all these here and then just flip it over. So easy. Okay, so now we're coming into Gateway Arch here. So let me see if I can do a little bit of a pass by here. So down there on the right, that's the old courthouse. And of course, we must fly through the the Golden Gate, the Gateway Arch. But we also must fly from east to west as the symbol of westward expansion. That's called scope on an anchor line. Thank you, Sailor Guy. How appropriate a name for the note. That is good to know. Scope on an anchor line. That's the slack in the line. Is that's called scope? All right. So let me see if I can get ourselves positioned for a little flying around the Golden Gate Park here. Quick, before we do that, let me see what we got here. Okay, so that's actually all I had for archers. There's a lot more to them and a lot more information if you're curious, but let me show a couple of stops that we just flew over. So right in front of us, you can't see it quite between, I'll flip out of the plane. Right down in the distance there, you can see the old courthouse. So this is what the old courthouse looks like. Very pretty building. And this is part of the national park. And then of course, the park grounds. Now this game was made in 2014, I think is the imagery they used. And so it actually looks like it's under construction here. So I wanted to grab a picture of kind of what it looks like. You also saw it with Aaron a little bit ago when Ranger Aaron took us on a tour. You got to see a bit of the grounds. The arch is as tall as it is wide, though. I might not look at it as the arch is 630 feet tall and 630 feet wide. Since you're not always looking at the arch straight on, you experience an illusion as much taller than it is wide. Very interesting. Huh. Nice, fun fact, Stacy. Thank you. I love that. So, okay, so that's the kind of what the park grounds look like. And last but not least, we got a little bit of a view here of what the St. Louis skyline looks like. Let me pull up what the arch looks like at night, so you can get the real thing sort of lit up. So there's the Gateway Arch, and the Gateway Arch does get lit up. It faces east-west, and so it'll catch the rising sun and catch the setting sun. Really pretty, but also they have lights that illuminate it at night. They'll do different colors for different events to commemorate different things. Yep, okay. So there you go. The extra slack line and the anchor line is called scope. So scope your catenary curve. Or you could pass another boater and say like nice catenary curves. That one might work for you, Fractals. I don't know about the catenary curves. For a pickup line, maybe not so good. See Busch Stadium from up top of the arch. Cool, yeah. Okay, so we'll flip here. Now this is a finicky plane, so I'm not going to fly around while I do a closeout here, but then we'll finish our last topic here and do our voting on the next one. So in summary about arches, if you grabbed the Gateway Arch by its ends, flipped it upside down, and made it flexible like a rope, it would make the exact same shape that it is now. This makes it a catenary curve, which is a particularly good design for an arch. Arches leverage a keystone, which is the piece at the very middle, so in that kind of very top section of the arch right in the middle. And without the keystone, the arch would collapse. It's a critical piece of it. So to bring it back to an example a little closer to home, you know when you stack a load of dishes out to dry, and you get the whole thing all the way up to the top, and then you get one carefully placed dish that kind of holds the whole thing together? That's your keystone dish. And clever you're using that keystone dish so effectively. So don't let anyone tell you that your dish pile is anything less than a masterpiece of architecture. I think I'm on dish duty tonight. Probably earned that one. All right. What do you say we fly through this arc? Whoa! Well, that was fun, huh? I'm gonna pop out of this plane. Yeah, remember that band trip? Remember that band trip? That's a funny way to start a conversation. Some don't. Make sure he's marking the type of that. Yeah. Oh, Fractals, I didn't know that you'd been there already. I really should ask you before we do a park. Like, is this one that you have direct experience with, and lean on you a little bit more on it? All right. Let's get ourselves lined up here. And westward expansion, here we come. All right, so Fractals, do you want to post up the next national park, and we can decide where we want to go next week? Also, I mentioned this last week, but I'm constantly trying to tweak things and improve things. Definitely use the survey input, so thank you for everyone putting in that. Last week I went a little too long with content. This week I went a little short, so I'll stay around for a little bit and do some aerobatic flying around the park and just kind of hang out in the chat if people want to. I do like to finish at 8. Make sure we don't go over our hour, but if people want to stick around, so. And while Fractals gets that up, our next park options then are Lake Clark National Park, Theodore Roosevelt National Park, or Mesa Verde National Park. Let everyone vote on those ones. Get myself positioned. We'll do one like this. Yep. Thanks for the links, Fractals. Do you mind doing the survey? I'm sorry, not the survey. The next week's park. Speaking of canyon flying. Is there so funny? All right, there we go. Thanks, Fractals. So put in your vote for where you want to go next week. Lake Clark National Park is up in Alaska. Theodore Roosevelt National Park is, I should be certain of this, but I believe it's North Dakota. But it's certainly in that general area. And then Mesa Verde is more middle of America. Give people a second here to vote. So I mentioned that aerobatic planes have that little sight off the wing, so there you go. That's sort of what that's for. You can see. And so if you tip your plane upwards, then you can look out your wing and say, oh, I'm even one way or the other. So right now I'm using a bunch of rudder to kind of turn the plane. But if you slow down too much, then you can't fly. Give people a second to vote. Let me do my sign off here. So today we talked about arches, and we talked about okay. I got a smile from the wife, which she may just be in love. Sometimes that happens too. I thought she had a cue card up. So today we talked about arches, and we talked about rivers. We talked about how rivers meander, and we talked about catenary curves, especially for arches. Fractals posted that survey. Please do fill that out. I do use the input. If you want to hang out in the Discord community, we'll chat about the national parks, other adventures, just kind of whatever's going on. And I'll post up some emojis from today's park for your use whenever you want. All right, Fractals, what's the currently and Jules makes me choose if it's a tag and the responsibility. That's pretty funny. All right, what do we get? 1 for Lake Clark, 3 for Theodore, and 4 for Theodore, and 3 for Mesa Verde. All right, Theodore Roosevelt National Park it is. So I will see you all next Tuesday at 7 to explore Theodore Roosevelt National Park. And with that, thank you for being my co-pilot today. And until we meet again, stay curious and keep on exploring. See y'all next week.